Welcome back to Four Sisters, where we will give you tips on self-care, self-awareness, self-confidence, and show you all the ways you can love yourself. So get ready to laugh, cuss, cry, and pray.
Welcome back to episode 8, guys. How have everyone's week been?
My week has actually been good.
It's been alright. Can't complain.
Ooh, well, I'm tired. My week has been long and busy. Actually, no way. Scratch that. I have had a good week because it's May.
It's your birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm back. My week's been pretty good. Less productive, but pretty good. I'm gonna be back. I'll be back next week.
What does that mean?
I'll be back on target.
Oh. I was like, where you go?
All right, well, let's jump on into it. What you got for us, Dani?
So this week in Rants, Reads, and Resolutions, we will be talking about 2 separate people and their mental health, their breakdowns, their whatever we're going to call them, because I really don't know what Bow Wow got going on. So we're going to start with Bow Wow, Bow Weezy, Lil Bow. And so Bow Wow has been, I guess, suicidal on Instagram lately. He just keeps like, I wish I could just jump. Yeah, I don't know what I've been through. I've been to Australia 3 times, ain't nothing left to do in the world. And I'm just like, okay. So he had a Breakfast Club interview a couple weeks ago that was like an hour long. I still ain't finished it. But, and what he talked about how he has been depressed because he has experienced everything in the world at such a young age, which is understandable. But then he became very like, before the interview and after the interview, he keeps talking about suicide. He's even naming his new album Suicide backwards, the word suicide backwards. So the issue that I have is that he has been on Instagram and Twitter and all these other social media accounts just going ham on the suicide thing. But then when people address him, like commenters or whoever, they're just like, oh, well, I wouldn't really commit suicide. So why are you saying it, Lil Bow Wow? So what is you all's take on Bow Wow and his mental health?
You gonna name the album Etiquette?
I saw her over there typing it like.
Whatever suicide is backwards, then yes, I guess so.
Okay.
What? Yeah, his name of the album is Suicide Backwards. First of all, no one's gonna buy the album.
First of all, it's kind of fake deep.
Suicide Backwards.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Everything he says is fake deep. But then he'll say something like, I've traveled the world and I've done everything at such a young age, which I can understand, but what does that have to do with correlating between depression and you've experienced everything? Y'all help me. I don't know. Maybe I'm just slow.
I think from what I saw, the clips I saw of the interview, it seems as if he's saying that he feels like since he's done so much so young, he doesn't really know what the rest of his life is going to be like. Like, he had a bucket list. He's done everything on his bucket list. And so now it's like, all right, now what? No, it's just kind of like, now what? Like, what is my life? I've done everything that I need to do. It feels like Bow Wow is kind of like in an identity crisis. He's trying to figure out what his purpose is. He's done a lot of stuff, but I don't know that he's necessarily living a purposeful life, so he doesn't really know what's left right now.
Because, when he started correlating it with, like, relationships that he's lost, like, he's like, I haven't talked to my grandma in, like, 10 years. And he was just like, and it's just for, like, no reason. It's just, like, I haven't talked to her in 10 years. And Charlamagne the Guy was like, so call her. Like, like, just the simple things. And he was like, it's just not that easy. And he was just like, why not? I just don't understand. And I'm not saying he has fake mental health issues because underlying there's something there clearly. Mm-hmm. But it's just that when you keep throwing suicide on everything, it's just like suicide this, suicide that. I'm jumping off the balcony. I'm taking my life. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And I wake up depressed and I don't want to be here no more. I often wonder what that means to his fans because his fans are like, don't jump, Bow Wow. Like, and I'm just like, how does that like, almost like vicarious trauma. Like, I'm stressed because I don't know if Bow Wow gonna kill himself today.
Right.
And then when people address him, they're like, he's like, nah, I ain't gonna really kill myself. Why do you keep saying it?
Figure of speech.
Yeah, figure of speech. And I'm like, saying you gonna kill yourself is like a real life thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want him to just like fall off the face of the earth. I don't want him to die. I just want him to fall off the face of the earth. Like just in an ever ending just fall.
Well, I think we're having this conversation because he also wants to fall off the face of the earth.
But there's a difference. He wants to die when he falls off. I just want him to be in like the sunken place, just always falling in like a black abyss.
Girl,
I think these people need to get some new friends and some new folks in the camp.
That's
because
true.
somebody need to sit him down and be like, get off of your phone.
Right.
Like, if you feeling this way, talk to somebody. But all this extra stuff, it's just too much.
A part of it, I'm just gonna say my opinion. A part of it, I feel like he really feels this way, but he don't know how to verbalize it because you got your gangster, and then the stigmas with mental health. But at the same point, I also think that there is a publicity stunt within this because of his album coming out. He's just trying any
Dos Equis or whatever the name of the album is.
Etiquette.
I cannot.
But like, it's just like it just runs hand in hand that he's just trying to promote. But I think he also has some underlying issues as well. But the media is not going to solve it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, it just kind of comes back to being human. Like, he is a celebrity, but he's also human. People that we work with do the same things all the time. They just don't have millions of people looking at them when they do it.
I tweeted that about Kanye.
We're going to get to him.
Oh, my bad. Thank you.
But so, is there a resolution for Bow Wow? I mean, I still feel like he needs to fall off the face of the earth, but like there's a chance for him to come back. So like, what would you all...
As he's falling, he's finding his purpose.
I think he just needs to fall back from social media and surround himself with some positive people and just get back to himself. Get away from, whatever expectations of the fans, get away from being Mr. 106 in Park and all of those things and just, figure out who Shad is probably what needs to happen.
And he even said on that Breakfast Club interview, he was like, I go by Shad Moss now or something like that. And I was just like, nobody's gonna call you that, Bow Wow. I mean, I would call him Shad if like I saw him outside of Bow Wow. To me, everything he does is a Bow Wow thing.
And I think that's part of the issue. He doesn't know how to get away from little Bow Wow.
Mm-hmm. Listen, it's got to be tough being a celebrity.
Yeah.
You're out here living a double whole life because you got a persona to manage, and then you've got who you are as a person, and sometimes those things don't go together, and that's got to be tough for your soul, for your
Right.
That's true.
Because he was the sweet little boy that we all love, but now he want to be the gangster.
Was he sweet?
He was sweet when he was like little Bow Wow.
I mean, he was because when he was on death row, he was cussing.
Yeah, but he was on death row for like 5 minutes, and then he was on So Deaf, and he was like this cute little Bow Wow.
Yeah.
Little Bee Weezy.
Doing the holler
with the little fuzzy cornrows.
Yeah. I think the issue, though, that really bothered me about his Breakfast Club interview was when he was just like, all my exes are doing bad except for one or two. And I was like, dang, Bow Wow.
See, and that's the
but
distraction.
But you're talking about suicide. So who's doing worse?
That's the distraction. Clearly, he is going through a lot. He don't know how to deal with it. And instead of, he's still trying to put up this persona of Bow Wow while also feeling his feelings. He just all jumbled up and confused. And he just got to stop talking to people who are using him for ratings.
Yeah. Somebody hashtag my therapist Jesus. He gonna be on my second shut-in.
All right, well, so there is a resolution for Bow Wow. We're going to hope he finds his purpose and gets around some people who can support him instead of leeching off him.
Yeah, man.
Here's a person that I truly don't care if you all have a resolution for. I've truly kicked him off the mountaintop. He's gone. I am still vibing to his music though. I'm going to say that. But yeah, because I was listening to the Kanye workout plan when I was doing my crunches yesterday. So, but either or. Kanye West. He has done a lot lately. He's moving mountains with his words. He's wearing manga hats with Donald Trump's signature on it. He is going to TMZ and talking about how he didn't want to get called fat like Roz, so he went and got liposuction, but he's still fat. I just don't understand that part. And he has a lot of opinions about, white, black Tommy Lawrence. I'm not going to mention her name. And he just has a lot of thoughts about.
But you mentioned Tommy Lauren.
Yeah, right. But excuse me, he's doing a lot. At first, I thought it was all publicity because this is Kanye, and he was talking about all these albums he had coming out between May and June, and I think July. And I was like, okay, well, Kanye is trying to get us talking, but then he started going a little too far. Even his wife was like, I mean, come on, guys. He has his opinions. I don't agree with them, but he has his opinions. But then he just really started talking crazy about, like, the most random things. Like, I had a psychiatric breakdown, but I call it a breakthrough because now I'm seeing things what they really are. No, you're not. This is the same Kanye that said that he did not want to even support George Bush because he didn't care about black people. It's the same Kanye that throughout every one of his albums, there's been a racist undertone to me, except for 808s and Heartbreaks. But there's like been some type of racial undertone, and now we lost him. He's gone, y'all. Kanye is gone. He did an interview with Charlamagne the God. That joint was like 2 hours long. I ain't finished it. But the first 20 minutes, I was concerned about him for the simple fact that he is one of those people who has all these mental health issues and doesn't go to therapy. He said the world is his therapist. And Charlamagne even looked at him like, what? And so I'm like, how do you help somebody that is not aware that they even have a problem? That's why he got to go. He got kicked off the earth for me. He ain't aware. He think that what he's doing is right, and therefore don't save them if they don't want to be saved, in the words of 3-6 Mafia.
Yeah, you can't force them. But
there ain't no but. That nigga gotta go.
Well, you asked us.
Did I?
Yeah. Go ahead, Kay.
I'm still rooting for Kanye. I think there's he has, man.
Gone, KK.
It breaks my heart. It really does break my heart because I try to like compartmentalize like what he's been through. Like a part of me is like wants to think what he's doing is trying to break away from the African American issues and problems because that's what his mom studied.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was her whole like she was a professor, right? But she was an African American studies professor, and a part of me is like he hasn't dealt with that. And I want to believe that it's probably some borderline personality stuff going on, or some narcissism. But he do need help. But he do need help. But I think he is trying to separate himself from the African Americans based off of some hurt. Like,
but you know, somebody actually did explain it, and I want to say it was Ebro from Hot 97 that was just like, Kanye is not the Kanye that was growing up in Chicago anymore. Yeah. He's in a rich neighborhood. He's in a rich family. He doesn't have those problems anymore, so he may find it difficult to identify with us because he's so far removed from that struggle.
I just don't think he wants to.
It's some damn Kardashians. That's what the problem is.
I don't think he wants. It's too much hurt to identify with our problems. It's too much hurt for him in his reality of dealing with what he's been through.
You know, I gotta piggyback off of UK and say that I'm also rooting for Kanye. Granted, right now I'm like, you know, he's on my sick and shut in list, but I'm still rooting for him. I'm hoping that he gets back to himself and he figures it out. I feel like right now it's a lot of stuff going on with him. I mean, like, at times he seems very manic, and then at other times he is like very like silent and sullen and quiet. I mean, it seems like his mood is all over the place, and I'm not going to say too much about him because I haven't done all my homework. Like, I haven't finished the Charlamagne interview and I haven't seen the unedited TMZ footage. I feel like everybody took a soundbite of him from that TMZ interview.
It got worse.
I'm saying most people took that soundbite and went off on it. And I haven't heard the full unedited interview that he did because it seems like there was some stuff there that most people missed. And I haven't heard the full Charlamagne interview, but people that I know who have heard it have had really positive things to say about how he presented and like his insight at that point in time. So it's clear that something is going on with Kanye. And I think that it's unfortunate because media gives us a soundbite or a clip of something and of somebody and presents it to us as fact, and we don't know everything that's going on with these people when they're on the
clickbait.
Yeah. We don't know what's going on. And somebody else, I think maybe it was Jamie Foxx, was saying that TMZ pretty much kind of set him up, got him out there talking, and used that as clickbait for their site. And it's like, that it's undeniable that Kanye has some mental health things going on with him. To what extent, we don't know. But
he denies that.
He denies it.
And
but
his wife denies it.
Be realistic.
But here's the thing, though. My issue with this is, and I get what you're saying, the reason why I've been like, you know what, Kanye, screw it. If you had a psychiatric breakdown, the report says, because TMZ to drug it up, report says that he had acute mental health breakdown and then extreme paranoia. He got on Lexapro per his interview. He said he's on Lexapro. But who is in his corner that's saying, okay, Kanye, you had a psychiatric you had a breakdown, you have paranoia, you are depressed, you're going through all this stuff. Who's in his corner saying there is a problem? Or are we all just saying, you know what, Kanye, we just want you to become the old Kanye again? They ain't the old Kanye. Kanye gone.
Need a new normal.
This is the new Kanye. And I feel like people are holding on to the fact that, The Graduation was a good album and Late Registration was a good album. That is not who Kanye is right now. And what we have to understand as therapists is sometimes when you have mental health that serious, you don't come back from that. I mean, because here's the thing. When you can have your mental health breakdown, you can feel like people were ridiculing your brother-in-law, and that's why he didn't come to the wedding. That's cool. You can talk about life perception. That's cool. But then once you start helping someone who is the oppressor of oppressed people, that to me is not mental health. That to me is like, that is how you feel. He's been on this Trump bandwagon since Trump started, when he was going on them random rants at his concerts. He's been doing that. That's nothing new. He's been saying he was at Trump Tower for the photo shoot with a blonde hair and blue eyes. Like, let's not forget that. But my issue is, if this is how he truly feels, and he's just like, he made the comment in the Charlemagne interview, and he was just like, okay, well, I personally feel like I can be the president of the United States because Trump was the president of the United States. And that means that anybody can be. I'm like, so the black man that was there first didn't make you feel like you could be the black man from Chicago who was before Trump, didn't make you feel like you could be the president of the United States? Despite the fact that, Barack was an alien. He's not the norm of black men, but still, like, a black man from Chicago didn't make you feel like you could be the president of the United States? A reality TV star who sexually abuses women, is xenophobic, homophobic, transphobic, all the phobics. He makes you feel like you can be the president of the United States because y'all share dragon energy. Kick him off. What do y'all got to say? I done got angry.
I see.
Mm-hmm. It's just that the frustrating part is that I feel like we excusing it just the same way we excuse Trump's, well, some people excuse Trump's crap. Like Republicans, because Republicans excuse it. Like, I mean, he only sexually molested 16 people. I mean, come on, guys. Could be worse. Or, well, we don't really know if he, slept with the porn star, even though she's got all the evidence. Like, we don't really know if he's, colluded with Russians, even though there's all this evidence. I feel like we are doing the same thing with Kanye. We're excusing it. We're doing the Donald Glover / Childish Gambino. We're looking at the front and not looking at the back of the video. That's what we're doing.
Well, I kind of think in that, if we're going to use that analogy, we're doing the actual opposite. Like, everybody's looking at what he's saying and isn't looking at the fact that there's some stuff going on with him and we don't know what it is. And it's like, we can't, well, I'm going to say for me, I'm not going to judge him based off of what I'm seeing because I don't know the full picture. I'm going to just be like, something's going on with Kanye. I wish him the best from a distance. I'm not going to drag him, and I'm not going to be out here like, woo, hooray, Kanye, you're the best. It's just like, I don't know what's going on over there, and I hope that somebody that is close to him is having conversations with him and is reaching out to him and is, helping him to understand and see that, like, he is very separated from his old self. And I don't know if he ever will get back. He may not.
But then when do we cut Kanye off if he didn't come back? When do we finally say, all right, Kanye, that's enough?
But when do we cut anybody off who has any kind of problems? Like, I don't think cutting off. I think, first of all, we can't pick and choose, like, at this point in time, oh, he's got a mental illness, or at this point in time, he's an old Kanye. He probably had a mental illness from
a long
Jump
time
Street,
ago, yeah.
and it's continuing to spiral because of all this other stuff that's going on. And then I feel like we pick and choose, like, oh, I don't want to deal with this Kanye, but he's spiraling out of control.
Mm-hmm.
And as people, and people that should be in his corner, they should be really like, hey, and people have reached out, but like, I don't feel like we should just cut people off. I think that happens all the time in the world. Like, people get schizophrenia. Oh, I don't want to deal with that person no more. They far gone. That we can do about it.
But how do you beat narcissism? Suck out the attention.
I don't think that you beat it, though. Like, I think that everybody's looking at him as being like, oh, you said this. I don't agree with that. You're being harmful. You're being damaging. Let's separate ourselves from him. And it's like, okay, you can separate yourself from him, but you can separate yourself from him quietly. Like, it doesn't have to be a thing where we're outwardly coming out here and dragging him and saying all this stuff about him. It could just be like, oh, something going on with Kanye. Period. I mean, we don't have to drag him like that. Because honestly, if we really sit down and study Kanye and think about like mental illness, Kanye probably had these issues in the very beginning because he's genius level producer, genius level like lyricist. And so whenever he was out here doing things that benefited us, it was like, hoorah, we're behind him. But now that he's being problematic, it's like, no, we got to push you off the boat. And it's like, in the one hand, I get that because it is problematic and I don't like the stuff that he's saying whatsoever. But whether he acknowledges us or not, he still is one of us. And I just don't feel good about kicking somebody who is a part of me.
I mean, but then that means that every problematic black person like Clarence Thomas, black folk got him out of here in the 80s. Y'all picking and choosing. So if you're saying that,
I'm not supporting him. I'm just not dragging him either.
Here's the hypocritical aspect of it. If you're saying that we're going to hold on to Kanye because he's near and dear to our hearts because of music, because that's the only reason he's near and dear to us. He's an artist.
Is that what I said?
No, what I'm saying is,
is that what I said? I said I'm not speaking on him. I'm not dragging him. I'm not saying anything negative about. I'm not saying anything about him. Period.
And I'm not either. What I'm saying is that's how I handle Kanye. That's like if a client comes to me who has a substance abuse issue and they're like, I don't have an alcohol issue. Okay, well, bye. Because how am I supposed to work with you if you're not even trying to help yourself? Like, that's how you deal with clients. Like, I can't, Kanye, until you get the help that you need, I don't want to have to deal with, I've blocked him and muted him on social media. I have. Once Kid Fury showed me how to do that online, I did it. But I've muted him from all my social media, but it's to the point where, like, it bothers me to the point that it just has become the conversation of the world. Like, Kanye. Donald Glover, Childish Bambino, dropped this cool video, and we still talking about Kanye.
No, I was talking about Childish Gambino.
Because, like, look how much conversation we've had about Childish Gambino's video versus the weeks of having to deal with Kanye West. It's just like we focus on these I hate to say minstrel shows, but these minstrel shows just for the simple fact that it's entertaining. That's why I said I'm saying the same thing you're saying. Kick him off the face of the earth. When he's ready to come back, he can come back, but he has to be healthy enough. I'm not gonna be one out there like I'm rooting for Kanye. I ain't.
I'm rooting for him to become.
Yeah, I'm rooting for him to become healthy and come back.
Yeah, I want him to get the help.
Prayers up for him.
I say my prayers.
I root for anybody. I mean, you're right. People have to want to get help, but it doesn't mean I can't be like, man, I sure hope they get it. Like, he's a person. You know what I'm saying? Like, at the end of the day. So, prayers up.
Prayers up. Prayers up for him and LB Dubs.
Did we say we're going to pray for Bow Wow?
I mean, pray that he gets some good support.
Etiquette, yeah.
Because real talk, I mean, I don't want anything bad to happen to either one.
Oh yeah, of course not. Of course not. I don't want anything bad to happen. Well, I ain't gonna say everybody. There's some people I want some bad things to happen to. But what I'm going to say, I mean, because if Donald Trump, if something happened to Donald Trump tomorrow, y'all ain't gonna sit here and lie and be like, dang, I'm gonna pray for him. Who praying for him?
I pray for all the leaders. It don't mean
So if he going,
prayer,
so if he break his arm tomorrow, you like, dang, I hope that joint heal.
It's not that. It's not like that. Like, I pray for him to find good leadership. For him to find, if he can find whatever he needs. Don't look at me like that. Because prayer,
prayer changes things,
honey. It changes things. Pray for whatever needs to happen. And if my prayer is like, hey Lord, do whatever you need to do. Like, it is what it is. But I'm not gonna wish bad on nobody. That's not who I am.
I ain't wishing bad. I just ain't gonna pray for him.
Is this the conclusion of Rants, Reads, and Resolutions?
Yes, guys.
All right. Thank you for that. All right, Kay. What you got for us?
All right, we're going to zero in to Miss K's corner, and we're going to dig a little deeper into mental health, taking it back to the basics is what I want to call it, because a lot of times we don't even know what mental health means. We don't know like the background of it and what signs to look for when you're trying to figure out are you healthy versus when you need to get support. Mental health, just a quick definition, it refers to the psychological and emotional well-being of a person. And the first point I wanted to do is some healthy characteristics of good mental health and some poor mental health characteristics. Good mental health characteristics, good self-esteem. I'm not going to say you have to have the top notch, but at least some level of self-esteem. Healthy expressions of feelings. Optimistic. Self-care management is important. Balanced. Social, work, and solitary life. Solitary, I'm just saying isolation. Like, you can't want to be inside all the time. Assertive, and open to explore change, I think are all, well, not all of them, but at least some good characteristics of good, balanced mental health. Some poor mental health characteristics would be the inability to regulate your emotion or does not share your feelings. Impaired self-worth, pessimistic, isolation, aggressive or passive-aggressive, low or depressed mood, and a big one is the blame game, like always trying to figure out who to blame for your issues and things like that instead of trying to take some accountability or find some solutions to what's going on. Okay, so moving on, mental illness. That's when the psychological symptoms impede on your ability to function on your day-to-day activities. Causes of mental illness can be environmental, where there's alcohol, drugs. Sometimes I think research has shown that some viruses can cause, or some sicknesses, some physical illnesses can cause some mental concerns. Hereditary, hormonal imbalance, or traumatic or negative life experiences. So it can be a combination, or it can be just one of those things that could trigger a mental illness. One of the main things that I think when people seek help, they automatically think that medication is a solution or the only solution, and so a lot of people don't come in, and that's when they come in for assessments with me. Some of them think I'm a doctor or like I'm here to prescribe the medication. So every diagnosis does not require medication.
No, it don't.
And even if you do require medication, like just think of it as if you're going to the doctor, and the doctor first day they tell you when you get tested and they say you got high blood pressure or diabetes, you're going to be in shock for a moment. And then you're going to realize that if I don't take care of myself, I'm either going to die or my symptoms are going to get worse. Like, I explain this to my clients all the time, trying to give the dictation between, there's no difference between mental health, taking care of your mental health and your physical health. Because if that doctor tell you got high blood pressure, they're going to say, here's a prescription for a medication to manage it. Take the salt intake down, change your eating habits, and exercise. So you got 25% of each of those things is creating a new and healthier you so that you can balance the actual illness. It's not curable. some mental illnesses, they are curable, but things like high blood pressure is not curable. Diabetes is not curable, but it's manageable, and you can live a long and healthy life if you manage it correctly. And trying to get people to understand the same thing with mental illness, when you acknowledge and call a thing, as Miss Ayala says, you can really zone in and get the help that you need.
Yeah, and knowing that, like, some people need medication to manage long term, and then some people need medication to get them to the point where they're stable while they're learning skills to manage it. So you don't have to be on meds forever,
right?
For every instance.
Like, because let's be real, when we see you guys come in our office, even though we try to promote and say preventative care is just as important as in coming when the symptoms have blown out of control. But a lot of times we see people come to our office when it's blown out of control, and a lot of the times you do need to be referred to medication management to take the intensity off and stabilize, because you're not going to be receptive to anything we're saying to you, because honestly, it's probably a trust issue there. Like, I tried this, I tried that, none of this works, just it's no help for me. And so to get you to a stable mindset for you to even accept and be receptive to like what the therapist is trying to provide to you, or even what you're trying to try for yourself, you may need that mood stabilizer to assist with that. Another issue is people think that when you are diagnosed with a mental illness that it requires years of therapy. Sometimes it only takes support of a therapist to teach you the adaptable skills to manage the symptoms, and you go on about your business. I personally believe that with therapy, it's only 30% of what the therapist teach you and what you're doing inside of that room for that hour, and 70% of what you're going to take out there and actually apply. Because if you're not applying the skills, you can't come back and tell me something does not work. It's almost like we are accountability partners, and we're trying to give you the supports, but you got to actually test the skills out.
We can't work harder than you.
Right. Like, you're going to actually take that remote out and you're going to program it, but they're going to give you a guide of how you're going to program it. Approximately 1 in 5 adults and 1 in 5 children experience mental illness in a given year. So that statistic was just in 2017 from NAMI, the National Association for Mental Illness. And I think it's important for us to, I guess, acknowledge that, because it's very common. 1 in 5, that's very common. And based on the statistics, whatever the statistic is for Caucasians, I couldn't find it, but whatever that statistic is, NAMI reported that half of however many Caucasians seek treatment, African Americans and Hispanics are half of that number. So we're not getting what we need.
And, I always give people a disclaimer when it comes to mental health statistics. A lot of times what's reported is based off of people who are actually coming forward and getting treatment. So you got to think about all the people who are suffering in silence and aren't even a part of that 1 in 5. It's probably more like 1 in 3 or 1 in 4.
That's true. So those are my nuggets for breaking down the basics of mental health. I guess I got a question to pose to you guys, if you don't mind. What are some of the common disorders that you see amongst African Americans that walk in and out of your office, and the symptoms like they experience?
Well, I work primarily with kids, little kids, so I get things like ADHD, PTSD, adjustment disorders, oppositional defiant disorder, things like that.
Yeah, I would say that's probably similar. I get the post-traumatic stress disorder as well, and the anxiety disorders, and a lot of the depressive, whether it's a situational depression or a major depressive disorder.
I actually deal with primarily like teenagers and adults. I get all the substance abuse clients, so it's a lot of people who have like cannabis use and cannabis use and dependence diagnosis. But then I get a lot of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I get a lot of depression. I've noticed I have a strong influx lately of like major depression disorder. And then the other one I get a lot is other specified, which is saying you have like half the symptoms to have post-traumatic stress disorder, and with more monitoring in engagement, you may either not have it, maybe adjustment disorder, or it may be something different. So it's kind of saying that their trauma symptoms, we can't determine if it's like full PTSD, adjustment, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I see children and adults and pretty much see the same thing in my office as well. A lot of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, a lot of adjustment because I have a lot of kids that are in foster care. And I think that's about it.
The moral to the story is, as we gave you the basic, I guess, warning signs of mental health, or just what mental health is and the distinction between mental health and mental illness, because there is a distinction. It's no different than your physical health and going to the doctor for your annual checkups. Make sure your mental health is on target as well, so you can be the healthiest you, the healthiest for your support system around you and who you're supporting, whether it's kids or just people in your job or your day-to-day interactions, because they are affected just as much as you are if you don't handle your mental illness or make sure your mental health is at a healthy place, because you're traumatizing or, they're becoming victims of you being a victim internally.
Awesome. Thanks, Kay.
You're welcome.
All right. So today for the Sister Circle, we are gonna play a game. But before we get into the game, I just wanted to kind of backtrack a little bit and add on to Kay's wellness segment, because part of our game is going to be talking about diagnosis. And so one of the things that we've never really mentioned on the podcast yet is, what is a diagnosis? Like, why do we name and label things that people have? And so what I like to tell people that I work with is that your diagnosis is kind of like the clothing label on your shirt. You know what cotton or what fabric it is, and you know what the care instructions are. And so when you come into us to get a diagnosis, that's basically what it is. We're naming what is going on with you, and then that helps us figure out what are the basic care instructions, and then we customize that to you. So basically the process of getting a diagnosis is that you would come in to our office or go into a therapist's office, and they would sit down and do what we call a comprehensive clinical assessment, which is them sitting down, kind of going through some of your background and your history and your symptoms, and figuring out what is going on with you. And so our game that we're going to play is really lighthearted, and we're going to be diagnosing some celebrities. But before we start, I just wanted to give that disclaimer that these diagnoses are just for fun. We don't have all the facts to make a real diagnosis. So yeah, y'all ready?
Oh, that's wrong. I don't know. I don't know if
that was our game show. Our game show music.
But I don't think. Yeah, I don't.
All right. So the rules of the game are, I've given us two what I'm going to call case studies. So I'll have two detailed descriptions of a celebrity and what's going on with them based off of some research that I did. I want you guys, and I guess this would be a little similar to like a brief assessment. So I want y'all to tell me, one, what diagnosis you think that this person has and why. And two, I want you to tell me, once we've figured out the diagnosis, I'll let you guys try to guess who the person is. All right. Person number one. This person has always had a big personality, which makes them excellent at acting and performing and dancing. For many years, this person was the center of drama before and after the director screamed action. Since an early age, they've been described as hyper. This person has experienced periods of time where they would walk and talk fast. They've had multiple tickets for speeding, and they also were easily enraged. And during those rages, they would kick, curse, throw things, storm off. Just a little background, this person was sexually abused as a teen by the pastor of her church, which mom was dating or was in love with. Also, in their early years, this person experienced several deaths of people that were close to her, including her father and her best friend. I I said her.
You did say her, but I still don't know who it is.
Yeah.
That was a good tip.
Throughout this person's teens and early 20s, they would end a performance with a night of bomb sex, describing sex as kind of like the nightcap.
I know who it is.
Hush. Describing sex as a nightcap at the end of a night. You know, they also did drink, you know, use some alcohol. I'm not sure if there were other drugs involved. This person also experienced very low and depressed mood in response to the consequences of the impulsive and risky life choices that they were making. And even after they got their mental health diagnosis, they refused to take medicine, feeling that it would be medication would take the edge off of their personality or take the boldness of their personality away. And the person said that it was hard accepting when they got their diagnosis. They felt like it's hard accepting that you have a problem, and they thought that everybody cried in their sleep, just like this person did.
It's Jennifer Lewis.
It is Jennifer Lewis.
Yeah!
Did you Google?
No, I remember her doing the interview, and she said she ended every performance with a nightcap of sex, and that's why I was like, oh, okay. Sad that I remember that part.
So which one is she, bipolar or is she borderline personality?
She's bipolar.
She got a little PTSD though.
Yeah, that's why I was like, because you know, sometimes that PTSD, if you don't go and treat in adulthood, it transitions to borderline.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Jennifer Lewis. She's my favorite actress.
So you guys said that it was bipolar and
that's what she said.
Right. So bipolar and PTSD. So our listeners don't know much about those things. So kind of help us understand, like, I guess maybe briefly or in a short sense, why you were thinking bipolar.
Well, she has high highs and low lows. I mean, she's very manic, which was the sexualized behaviors and the big personality, like the cursing, the screaming, the etc. So that to me is like the manic. But then she has the walking and talking fast. I don't remember everything.
Because when you think about mania, like the person is lit. They're like the Energizer Bunny. It's like Tigger.
They
from
like pace and etc. But then the low lows, I don't remember what you said about low lows, but the low lows is pretty much like depressive symptoms, things that where they stay isolated, withdrawn, just like your typical depressive episode. But they normally happen like you can either have one that happens more often than the other, so you can be more depressed, or you can be more manic, or you could be hypermanic, which means that you're more manic than normal, which kind of got a little bit of that. But so yeah, I think though it's PTSD. I think like KK said, there is a lot of PTSD. She had a lot of trauma at a young age, sexual abuse and traumatic grief. I'm assuming there might be some traumatic grief, which is different than regular grief. FYI, Google it. But yeah, so there are some things that she has not managed to process, and I think that's really impacted her behavior, especially her sexualized behavior. But she is an exceptional. If I never listened to that interview, because she has a book out, I would have never known any of those things about her. Because she's like one of those actresses. She's also the grandmother on Blackish. But she's one of those actresses that, like, ever since Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, she just had the best, like, personality. You would have never... That's the thing about mental health. And they got no face. Go, man, let's go.
So, yeah, definitely. Thank you, Dani, for explaining bipolar and PTSD. Kay, you mentioned something about a potential personality disorder. Why do you think that?
Just because sometimes some of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder that especially experienced as childhood, it resembles that in the adulthood, and it turns into that borderline personality disorder. So the highs, the lows, and inability to regulate your emotions, like all of those. Sounds like she have it, so it may be a lot of factors there.
The thing about a personality disorder is that a lot of times people who have personality disorders have experienced, some kind of trauma, or they, instead of it getting treated, or sometimes it's gotten treated and it's still being unmanaged somewhat. And so it goes from being behaviors, and it kind of starts to morph into their personality. These behaviors become who they are, and it kind of like is all encompassing. So definitely wouldn't. I wouldn't shy away from some personality, possibly.
Right, and thinking of her age, the whole idea of PTSD being a civilian disorder is recent, like in our generation, and PTSD wasn't even something that they even would have thought of diagnosing somebody probably back when she first got her bipolar diagnosis.
Yeah, because it was in 1990 when she got her diagnosis. All right. Y'all did good on the first one. See about the second one. All right. So for the second person, they grew up in a popular low-income community on the West Coast. And in their early years, they witnessed a lot of community violence, like a lot of gang violence, a lot of neighborhood violence. This person began having extreme sadness and low moments as a teen, but was able to maintain straight A's in high school. This person has experienced periods of hopelessness as well as suicidal thoughts. In one summer, they lost 3 close friends. They even were once quoted as saying, "I had to get off my tour bus and go to these funerals." And then once they became very popular in their career, this person began to have survivor's guilt because they made it out of the neighborhood and they had to leave so many people that they love, so many families, so many friends behind in that neighborhood and in those conditions. And they were feeling really guilty about the fact that like they were doing so well while all the people they cared about were still in the struggle. This person has a history of really, taking down the alcohol. They really overindulge and have said about their alcohol use that they find it numbing, and also that there was a lot of peer pressure or that it was socially acceptable to drink as much as they did. I'm not sure that this person still drinks. I know that at one point they also used marijuana, but they no longer use marijuana. It's believed that their alcohol use started because they were exposed to family members drinking around them and possibly were given alcohol at a very early age, like under 12. And although they've had all these experiences, they have been able to turn to Christianity following the death of their friend, and that has helped them to overcome their trials and tribulations.
I thought it was 21 Savage until that Christianity part.
Yeah, it's not 21 Savage.
They grew up. Is it Janae Aiko?
Nope.
Who grew up with them? Is it Chris Brown? Nah, that ain't him.
Oh God.
No.
I'm trying to think of who grew up on the West Coast.
What were you about to say, Kay?
I don't know. Them 3 devs.
Okay, I can't confirm Compton.
Okay.
They grew up in Compton.
Is it the game?
It is not the game. He is
You
not a Christian.
50 Cent.
Girl, no.
Got Richard Dad trying.
In New York. Girl, you know Michelle A would have been in this thing.
Give me a. Can I get a
Snoop
ABC?
Dogg.
It's okay. So I gave y'all 2 hints because y'all said it's a rapper. It is a rapper.
Okay.
From Compton.
Is it Kendrick Lamar?
It is Kendrick Lamar.
Oh.
He literally has a song, "Pull Up, Drink."
Oh yeah. Do I get a prize?
No. So what do you guys think is going on with Mr. Kendrick?
I didn't know that until about right now, so I don't know. He definitely got trauma.
He definitely right. It's definitely some PTSD there, but maybe a little bit of major depressive disorder.
And I think that he was self-medicating to numb the pain, so that's where the alcoholism came in.
Which is a known fact for African Americans to do to kind of sort of mask what's actually going on because it feels good.
So instead of having to deal with it, you turn to a substance.
Yeah.
And even some of that with Jennifer Lewis, like instead of dealing with her stuff, she was also like using some stuff and having sex. So it's not uncommon for people to act out their emotions as opposed to talk to them. But yeah, it definitely was some depression with Mr. Kendrick. So the reason why I chose celebrities for this game was because I really wanted our listeners to know and understand that, we are out here admiring these people and they've got all kinds of things going on with them. Like things that before I did this research, I didn't know about them. And so they're human just like us. And plus, just to kind of like normalize the fact that this stuff is happening in our community a lot. And nobody really is immune. Like even reading some of the stuff, I was like, dang, 3 of his friends got killed in the same summer. But I guess that's kind of like Compton.
I mean, it sucks too because I was thinking that was 21 Savage because he did a Breakfast Club interview and Charlamagne almost became like his therapist in the interview. It's a real good interview, but he was like, yeah, like everybody I know got killed. And he was just like, he normalized it. Yeah. It was like, like, yeah, all my friends died.
We had a conversation the other day talking about how common, like, it's community violence and it's normalized so much because it happens so often, but how many of these young men, young women are really suffering from like PTSD or whatever, but it's just something that they have to go through because it is what it is.
It comes with where they live. It's a part of like their home environment.
Yeah.
And I think that self-medicating is normalized in the African-American community too because we all have experienced, I'm not going to say we all, a lot of us have experienced trauma, but we don't know it's trauma. Like we don't know what the definition of trauma is. We don't know how you get trauma. And we also don't know that trauma is not a permanent diagnosis or PTSD is not a permanent diagnosis. And so then we go to the easiest thing, which is, drinking beer, drinking alcohol. You go to cookouts.
Up on the weekend.
Yeah, you turn up. But then it becomes a thing that you do outside of the weekends. It becomes a Wednesday night, becomes a Thursday night. And I don't think we realize that the reason why you're drinking is not because alcohol tastes great, because honestly, it's not that great. Unless it's rock. But the only thing that I would say in that situation is that if you were to stop drinking, how would you feel? What would you feel? What would your life be like?
And that's the scary part.
That's the scary part.
Right. Indulging.
Yeah.
Even if you think about like after a funeral, there's a repast, and like if somebody died in the hood, the repast is a cookout, and everybody's turning up, and we pouring something out for the homie. So
I ain't pouring nothing out.
It's all going in.
It's all going in.
But and that goes back to what Kendrick said. A statement you've been, it's socially expected. That's how they expect you to.
And then deal with everybody else is doing it too, because it's like you're in a group of people who are masking their problems, and it's like it sucks.
And oftentimes, especially in like high violent communities, like you don't have any time. You always on guard because you have to be. So you have to be on because you ain't got time to experience no emotion because you might get shot. You know what I'm saying? So
somebody step on your shoe, you going off because you don't even know like what your intentions are. Did you step on my shoe on accident, or did you step on my shoe because we getting ready to square up? Like that's how these little things, quote unquote little things, turn into huge brawls or huge situations because everybody's on edge. So yes, I wanted to give y'all those case studies for you to kind of understand those things, and definitely, open the door for us to have more conversations about trauma and stuff in the future, because y'all know trauma is our jam. All right, so now I got some very simple guess this person.
I know the.
Can you let's let others.
Well, I mean, we all.
Yeah, let's go.
Try to guess before you guessed it, because you probably do know.
No, whatever.
The first person, so this person was going through a divorce, and they attempted suicide by sitting in their garage with the engine on.
Her husband's name was David Justice that she was going through a divorce with.
This was in the 90s.
Yes!
Yep. Halle Berry tried to commit suicide. She's had some mental health issues. This next person I love a lot. Attempted suicide by taking sleeping pills and aspirin following a very messy affair with a married T-Mobile employee.
You shady for
yes,
the
girl.
T-Mobile
I was shady for the T-Mobile. But yes, it was Fantasia. Hey, girl.
Fannie Mae actually tried to commit suicide before, too, didn't she?
Yeah. She's
been through a lot.
She's had a tough life.
Yeah,
y'all seen the movie?
Domestic violence.
I don't know what she said.
Truth is.
And then, we've already had our little conversation about Kanye.
Mr. West.
Wake up, Mr. West. That is a perfect moment for this.
Yes.
So to circle back a little bit,
Dun, dun, dun.
because in the beginning we were very passionate about Mr. West, and now that we've learned all this about, mental health and diagnoses and learning all this stuff, what do y'all think Kanye's diagnosis is?
All of.
Well, actually, one thing I don't know about Kanye, and y'all might, because I don't know. Has Kanye ever talked about substance use?
He was addicted to the opioid.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm talking about like marijuana, alcohol. Like, we don't really know of any of that stuff. We know about the opioids.
Did he end up with a TBI from that
TBI?
the traumatic brain injury?
Oh, why was I here? The STD? I got so confused.
He was like, he got tuberculosis.
Yeah, that's what I was like.
That's how rumors get started.
I got so confused.
I don't remember, but I know he got in that really bad accident right before.
I was gonna bring that up.
Yeah. So
Kanye's had a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
Even before his mom died, he almost
He
died.
needs some neurofeedback therapy.
He might.
TBI.
He actually might.
I was thinking about him the other day because Through the Wire had came on when I was getting dressed, and I was like, yo, Kanye really done been through some stuff.
And that's trauma in itself, because even in the Through the Wire song, he was just like, he didn't want his mama to have to bury him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's
That's
and then you end up having to bury your mama.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Oh, child. I was started on a Monday, didn't
Mm.
Lord, didn't it?
Y'all are so foolish. But yeah, so looking at the fact, like,
He definitely got PTSD.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking up some stuff too, because I was like, we don't really hear a lot about his dad, but he does have a father, and he seems, I feel like in one of those recent interviews he talked about his dad a little bit, so he exists, and he seems like he was fairly active in his life.
I also would say that he would have opioid dependence. However, it would be in remission, because I don't think the way he talks, it's not like he's on it anymore. Unless y'all, I don't think so.
So see, but somebody,
Even though it might not have been 12 months, but
yes. So I wonder how. I don't know. This is probably where you could come in. I don't know a lot about how opioids affect you, but someone made a comment recently about the fact that his presentation is very different in the two interviews, like the way he presented in the TMZ versus how he presented with Charlemagne. I personally said that he does best in white rooms, but that's neither here nor there. Is it possible that he could have been on opioids in one of those interviews versus the other?
Well, somebody actually brought that up to me. It was my brother-in-law made the comment, and he was just like, I think it was a
Publicity stunt.
Thank you. I could get the It was a publicity stunt, because as you said, his demeanor was extremely different.
Mm-hmm.
It was like he was way more focused than one. But I can't say that what happened at TMZ is an opioid. That could have been anything, honestly, because you have to be able to look at like his eyes, his behaviors, like the whole context of it.
What would that look like?
What?
How would someone present if they were on opioids?
Depends on the person.
Thank you for nothing.
I mean, what does? Because
That was a teachable moment. That's what it was.
Because the symptoms, but everybody's symptoms look different based off of that person. Like, some people look high, and some people, you don't even realize they're high.
Tell the people exactly what you mean by opioid, because some people might not actually know what that means.
Oh, so, like, a lot of times you go to the dentist and they give you stuff like Percocets or like strong. They give you strong medications, but they're normally used as pain. They're normally used as pain medications, but they're highly addictive. And what happens is, if you get into these situations, I'm gonna need y'all.
I'm sorry, she
My
got masked
ADHD
off
kicks
in my
in.
head, and I was like, Millie Rock.
But yeah, so opioids are, you can have dependence and you can have use. Some people have use because they use them, but it's not as consistent. It may impact, your social life and your, home life. But when it impacts numerous settings, like you are struggling to go to work, you can't, cope with anything going on in your social life, etc., then it becomes dependence. Like you can't live without it. However, one thing I've noticed about opioid dependence, this quote unquote crisis, is that a lot of people don't see it as a real drug because you are actually legally able to take it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you go to the dentist and you get your wisdom teeth pulled out and they give you a prescription of opioids and then you call back to the doctor and say, you know, my teeth are still hurting, they will refill it. Versus if you can go to prison for marijuana. So people see it as like, because of the consequence, and that's one of the roots of the crisis, people don't see there's any real consequences because it's so easily accessible. And I think there was actually a report not too long ago that a lot of people's understanding of the opioid crisis is that it's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know if there's any Jadena fans out there, but Jadena has on his album, I think it's called Long Live the Chief. He has a song called White Nigga, and it's about...
Girl, what?
It's called White Nigga.
Okay.
And it's about kind of about the opioid crisis. It talks about how white women abuse opioids. Yeah, you should listen to it. It's a good song.
But I'll be honest with you, and this is me being, who I am. The opioid crisis is a crisis, but like so is crack cocaine, so is heroin, so are the street drugs the African Americans have intake as much. And I think the issue is that when in the 80s came, crack cocaine, which is the street form of cocaine, was the epidemic. And nobody was, we didn't call it a crisis. We called it something punitive when we sent you to prison. Mm-hmm. Versus the opioid crisis is not punitive. We want you to get treatment. Mm-hmm. We have all these clinics out here for people who abuse opioids because it's not a black people problem.
Mm-hmm. I was just about to say, why you think that is?
Okay.
That's why Jadena made that song about white niggas.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Because, I hate to say it, even I sometimes resent, as a substance abuse clinician, I resent the opioid crisis because people come in, and I know they have real issues, so I'm not denoting that. It's just that, but so do black people. We legalizing marijuana in states, and people are still locked up for marijuana. Like, that doesn't even make sense. Mm-hmm. So it's like, if you're going to focus on the drug, focus on all of them.
It's true.
The system. So yes, we
got real black right now.
We did. We are pro black. So all right, but thank you for educating us some on opioids because that's important for our listeners to know and also me. So there may or may not be some substance use issues with Sir Kanye. We definitely know that there's some trauma. What about any mood things?
Of course.
What do you mean?
Any mood disorders? I already told you, my man's be manic, and I would venture to say hyper.
But here's the thing, though, and not going too into therapy, but there's like that differential diagnosis aspect of
That's
it.
True.
Mania is in a lot of different types of diagnoses, and I think we always go to bipolar because it's the easiest one to identify. However,
major depressive
right, exactly. So I will say one thing. I am concerned about Kanye at a specific aspect. I will say this because now that you just said that, it made me think about a client I had that attempted suicide, and he was extremely depressed. And then right before he attempted suicide, he became extremely hypermanic, and like he was doing a whole bunch of stuff that was completely different, and nobody really caught the warning signs. And so I think that now that I say that, I'm going to pray for him.
Look at that.
See? I did, because I had to think about that client that I had.
Yes. And that's what I was saying about the whole...
That's cool.
That's what I was saying about the whole Kanye situation is that there's so many people out here who don't know anything about mental health and don't know anything about mental illness, and they're throwing it around. I'm like, Kanye's crazy, and it's like, but we don't. You don't even really know what quote unquote crazy means, and you don't even really understand what's going on with Kanye. None of us really do, because none of us are a treating clinician for him. We haven't sat down and heard everything that's going on with him outside of what is accessible publicly. And so it's important sometimes whenever we're dealing with our own family members, our own friend, anybody, when we're dealing with people and you don't know the full picture, mind your business. And just be like,
Don't
you know
mind
what?
your business.
I mean, well, mind your business in the aspect of like not judging them, but reach out and be like, hey, I'm concerned about you, and I may agree to disagree, but I want to make sure that, you know, you're feeling better. I hope the best for you. I'm not going to be a part of being another stressor in your life. At the very minimum, I won't do any more harm.
We'll get off social media.
But he definitely does need to get off of social media and stop speaking to people who don't mean him harm. It's okay for him to have conversations with the people who care about him and the people that love him. Because the people who have had conversations with Kanye have all consistently said, whether they agree with him or not, that, you know, it's not as bad as it sounds or whatever. So, y'all, let's stop thumb thugging and just keep that man in our prayers. Alrighty, so what you got for us, Cici?
All right. Well, so since we're talking about mental illness, and one of the things that I really wanted to do was sort of close that gap a little bit between mental health and the Bible. Now, I will say this for a disclaimer, that we don't see mental illness spoken particularly plainly in the Bible because back then there was no such thing. And so I thought it was pretty interesting. I found some folks that were talked about in the Bible, and we can sort of see like maybe potentially what they could have had. Mm-hmm. So the first one that I did was King Nebuchadnezzar. He was a king in the Old Testament, and he was a prideful man. He didn't believe in God. And eventually, like, everything got to him, and he was driven out of the human company, which basically means he was moved out in the land, and he was out here living in the forest. And he ate grass like an ox. That's supposed to be an ox. And he his hair grew like feathers of an eagle, and his nails like the claws of a hawk. This story is demonstrated in Daniel chapter 4. So pretty much he was driven out, and he looked, quote unquote, crazy. And so that can be likened to maybe he had some sort of schizophrenia, he was maybe bipolar or something, but he went out there. Well, yes, and he lived out there for a while, but he was just doing
some delusions,
things.
Maybe?
Yeah, so it could have been any of that. There was also another king, also in the Old Testament, King Saul, and he had a spirit that was terrifying him, and he called it's an evil spirit. And in the Bible, it's an evil spirit from God that's frightening him. That's what everybody thought that it was. And so that can be found in 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 15. So there was something that he kept hearing, something that was vexing him. And in the Bible, his court or his people that were underneath him would tell him, let's go find some music and maybe the music will soothe you. So they were trying to help him with this evil spirit and to help calm him down. So that's another little example. There was also an example, and this happened in the New Testament, and most people have heard this story, but there was a man who was controlled by an evil spirit, and this is in the Bible, and this is how they explain it. And it says, this man lived among the burial caves and could no longer be restrained, even with a chain. By day and night, he wandered among the burial caves and in the hills. He was howling and cutting himself with sharp stones. And this was found in Mark chapter 5. And so most people, when they hear stuff like that, they're like, oh, okay, that's somebody who was really out of their mind. And he was cast out of the regular community because he was going through all this stuff and nobody understood what was going on. And it took Jesus to go see him. Nobody would see him. It took Jesus to go see him. He healed the man. The spirit came out of the man and got into some pigs, and the pigs all dived off the cliff. If we put it into modern day, we might could say that he had some sort of mental illness. We also have many people who have bouts of depression. We had King David. If you read any of the Psalms that he wrote, like he's like, woe is me. He was a king. He dealt with a lot. He also was with this woman, Bathsheba, and he killed her husband to be with him. So he had a lot of grief about that. He kind of realized, like, ooh, I kind of did a bad thing. There was a prophet who was named Elijah. He also was overcome with a lot of depression because, you know, God was saying, you know, you need to tell these people to do this, and they were out here doing their own thing. And so having to have that kind of thing. We all know the story of Job. He lost his family, he lost his friends, he lost his wealth. And how could you not be like, no, what is going on? So some of these people, if we would consider like everything that was going on with them, they may have a form of depression. So I think that these things you can read them in the Bible. I don't want to put on the fact that, okay, yeah, these people really did have mental illness because it was different. And some of these things, if you read in the scripture, like for King Nebuchadnezzar, like the Lord was teaching him a lesson. So he allowed some of that to happen. And I know that that's a whole episode and a debate in itself, I guess. But when the man came to his senses and realized, like, God is who he is, and I can't be prideful and think that I'm better than anybody else, then the Lord helped him out of that. But I think overall as a church, again, we have a responsibility that we can't just allow people with mental illness to just be. We have a responsibility that we have to help them. And so it's my opinion, but we haven't done a great job in ministering to people who have a mental illness. And so it doesn't have to be. So there was a lady, Amy Simpson. She wrote a book called Troubled Minds, Responding to Mental Illness. And basically it's for Christians who need to understand how mental illness works, because there's a lot of people in the community, in the Christian community, who won't even touch it. Mm-hmm. And so they give them some scriptural references and things of that nature that can help people understand how to communicate, how to work with people, what our purpose is in the community to help people with mental illness. So one of the things that we can do is the right action starts with the right attitude. People seek the church because they need help in dealing with symptoms of mental illness. And so we have to really accept them in, bring them in, no matter what it is, because, you know, it's affecting them, but it could be affecting everybody else. And so they're coming lots of times as like the last resort, like, I'm just going to go to church and hope that something happens. And when they come, it seems like some people, not everybody, but they're shunned away. And then it's like, well, you know, why did I even come? So we have to really have a right attitude about what's going on. Christians can find hope and meaning in mental illness and other hardships. One of the reasons mental illness and other forms of suffering feel like threats to faith, because many Christians are brought up into the philosophy that we're supposed to be happy and healthy at all times. But that's not the case. The Bible says no weapon formed against me shall prosper, but it didn't say that the weapon was going to be formed. So we're going to have trials and tribulations, but we just have to know how to be able to handle and deal with those things. I think people live in a world where they thought that, like Eden, the Garden of Eden was supposed to be this perfect thing, but that all changed when Adam and Eve ate the apple. So we're going to be faced with trials and tribulations, and some of that may come in the form of mental illness, but we have to just know and hope that if you can't be, like, if it's not like a short-term mental illness where you can really get the help and overcome it, you might have to learn how to live with it, but have a hope that, okay, I'm going to live with it. I'm not going to let it defeat me. One of the things that, when we're talking about diagnosis, I hate diagnosis, but I understand that it's necessary. It's because I don't like the label, but I also think that people say, well, I'm bipolar. No, you have bipolar. You don't have to be that label, and I think that's the difference.
Or that, you know, that's going to define the rest of your life. That, like, I've got to be this way. And it's like, no, you can manage it.
Yeah. The other thing is we are part of the solution to this health crisis. We can't afford, as the church, to ignore mental illness. Like I said, it affects everyone, and responding to it is part of the work that we are called to do as a Christian people. And so we got to spread love and hope, and we got to kind of step out of that idea that there's nothing that we can do, and it's all going to be something that God can do. Now, don't get me wrong, like He changes things and He can heal and set free, but everybody's purpose is different, and we still have a responsibility to come in and help that person and say, hey, like, I can pray with you, but I also think maybe it's okay to go talk to somebody else about it. But I think we don't make that step. Another thing that we do is we got to replace false beliefs and stereotypes about mental illness with the truth. We might not always agree on the aspects of what the truth is, but we got to be dedicated to pursue the truth rather than hide away and run away from it. Then the next thing is pursuing our God-given mission, which is helping hurting people. So that's always been the mission. We know in the New Testament when Jesus came, He was out there in the trenches. He was out here healing people who were sick. He was out here raising the dead. I mean, He was out here doing things that He needed to do, and we got to be like Christ and do some of those things that He was doing, and getting out with people and talking to people, and not be afraid. The last thing is we have more than one reason for hope, even when life seems hopeless. So when it comes to stuff like mental illness, it's easy to focus on the pain and struggle and to lose sight of the work that God can do in those circumstances. So, like I said, as a Christian believer, okay, you might be suffering with schizophrenia. We know that there's no cure for schizophrenia, but there is hope in knowing that, okay, it can be managed. You don't know what work God can do for a person who has schizophrenia and what purpose that his life may serve or her life may serve with having that illness, if that makes sense. So these are all things I really just want this is like my mission when it comes to being a Christian and being a part of the church. Like, we really have to communicate and we really have to move forward with putting mental health in the box and just leaving it. We got to stop doing that. Mm-hmm. What are y'all thoughts about any of that?
I agree. That's true. I think it's very interesting because now that when I was listening to you, I was reflecting back on like any programs I've even heard of in the church regarding mental health. Like, I know you have pastoral care, which is, you can go and have your time with the pastor, but I can't actually even think of like maybe one program, and I actually did it. But yeah, that's interesting that you say that. I think that it's almost like the unspoken, like, ooh, you can't talk about that. But that's interesting.
Yeah. And it's so sad because a person with a mental illness may come to church for help and we don't know what to do with that. But a person who has cancer will come in, we'll pray for them and all that stuff, right. But we'll also be like, well, you go back to your doctor and you make sure you're doing all that stuff. But when it comes to mental health, nobody's like, well, it's sort of like, go talk to somebody, like Jesus got it all.
Like the leper in the Bible.
Yeah.
He's going to cast you off to your own little leper village.
Yeah. So
you can pray and go to therapy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like that whole faith without works thing. It's like, you're having faith that this condition is going to leave you, but you also got to put the work in. And sometimes that work is going to therapy and talking to somebody and getting some skills so that God can finish it up for you. So thank you for that. I mean, that touched me, or even just knowing kind of the presentation in the Bible of like people, mental health in the Bible, because nobody probably even thinks about that. And knowing that mental health has always been something, and I'll say for me, the more that I work on my mental health, the better my relationship is with God, because I think in some senses getting your mental right is kind of like very spiritual too.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that sprinkle of Jesus.
And we were kind to your sprinkle today.
Thank you.
Alrighty. So, any last thoughts?
It is May, so that means it is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yes.
So if you don't know what that means, you could probably click on any social media hashtag that says mental health awareness, and it's going to lead you to something that helps you and educates you. Always praise those who are getting support. Do not shun them, whether it's church, your neighborhood, your family, etc. And just make sure that you're doing the best so you can say that you are improving your mental health, because it's always a process.
You may not have mental illness. You may just want to have some skills. Nothing wrong with that. Alrighty.
Like, comment, subscribe, show us some love.
We are now on Instagram under Four Sisters Podcast. We are always going to be on Facebook, Four Sisters Podcast. The podcast is available through Spreaker, YouTube, iTunes, and SoundCloud under Four Sisters Podcast.
Catch you next week.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.